Good evening and welcome to this final meeting of the year of the Westborough Board of Selectmen, the calendar year. It's Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020. We will be having a joint meeting later with the Board of Health. This meeting is being held remotely, of course, and the board previously was in executive session. We suspended that. We will be entering back into executive session at the end of this meeting. And we'll talk about that in a second as we review the agenda. But first, I'll read the governor's orders. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Westborough Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so through Westborough TV, streaming, through cable, or online. No in-person attendance of the meeting of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. And Alan, if you would just pull up the agenda, I would appreciate it. Okay, so we'll start. Our second agenda item is the upcoming community events and activities. We'll have approval of meeting minutes from November 10th, 2020. We have a request to waive water sewer connection fees for affordable units at the Village Commons. We have a discussion vote to approve complete streets policy that will be presented by our DPW director. We have a Hockomock Pond update by our conservation director. We have a request for an innkeeper lodging permit from Azad Westborough LLC DBA the Westborough Inn. We will around 7:30, as close to that, we'll have a joint meeting with the Board of Health for the purpose of a discussion vote to set the date and location for the 2021 town elections, joined by our town clerk. We'll also during that time have an update on the CARES Act, COVID-19 updates from the town manager. We'll then move to our item number 9, discussion vote to amend the assistant civil engineer job description. We'll have our town manager report, issues and correspondence to the selectmen, and then we will enter into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel, the fire chief and police chief, as well as to discuss purchase, exchange, lease value of real estate at 0 Ruggles Street off Ruggles Street. Okay.
Can I just add, Shelby, we actually updated the agenda at 5 o'clock today. So under the discussion vote to set the date and location for the town elections, it's at 7:30. The board will also have a discussion vote to add an additional selectman seat for a 1-year term to the town election ballot.
Yes, thank you, Christy. Thanks for, I was going to talk about that when we got to the agenda. No, but you're right by doing it right now. And that was based on late breaking information we received today. So late this afternoon, which is why I missed it on the version I was looking at. So thank you, Christy. Okay.
Actually, Shelby?
Yes, I am.
So it's Syed Hashmi. I'm also on the Board of Health. I'm also a candidate in this upcoming election, so I'm not going to be participating in this discussion. I'll just put myself on mute. Okay?
I don't think that that's necessary. So when we get to that part, maybe you can explain that. I don't think that's necessary. I'm a candidate too, so we'll talk about it when we get there. Okay, let's move on. Okay, first agenda item, upcoming community events and activities. I'll start with Selectman Johnson. Do you have any?
I do not.
Selectman Edinburgh.
Yes, I just want to remind people that as we could not do our traditional holiday stroll this year because of the COVID restrictions in our desire to keep everyone healthy and safe, that the Recreation Department and others have put together a wonderful holiday spectacular. If you go to the Recreation Department website, there's a map with actual driving directions of a route to over 40 homes around Westborough who have decorated for the holiday season, and certainly invite people to enjoy some of the holiday spirit using that route, that map, and that participation.
Thanks, Alan. Selectman Hashmi?
I have nothing.
Okay, and the only thing I just want to remind the public is that beginning in January, we'll have a standing agenda item to allow for open forum. And folks will, if you want to participate, you'll need to submit your, request of interest to join the meeting in advance through the Board of Selectmen's email address. So we'll make sure that's part of the agenda and get that posted going forward. As we remain remote, we need to remain connected. So, okay, next agenda item, approval of meeting minutes, November 10th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the November 10th, 2020 meeting as presented.
And I'll second that, Selectman Johnson.
Okay. And any discussion? Seeing, hearing none, roll call vote. Selectman Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi?
Yes.
And Selectman Marshall, yes, 4004 being present. Thank you. Thank you to Seal, as always, for continuing to churn the minutes out. Okay. Next agenda item is the request to waive water sewer connection fees for affordable units. And sorry, I'm just... Christy, do you want to introduce this?
So this is for the development that you actually approved the application, the LAU application last week for the affordable units at Village Commons. And so the developer is coming forward to ask the board to waive the water and sewer connection fees for the affordable units only. So there are 3 affordable units in the development. I did include in your packet some emails from Jim Robbins, who said that the board has historically done this. I also included a policy that that spoke to sewer privilege fees and the waiver of those for affordable units. So if the board has any questions, Farouk Ansari is on the call, and also Fred Leonardo.
Okay. So are there any questions to start by the board?
No.
I have a couple. I just want to give the board a chance. So I guess my first question would be to our building commissioner, and maybe actually to our DPW director is also on. It appeared as of early December there were a number of issues still being addressed by the developer with the town. I'm assuming those are progressing, and that a vote here would not impact any of those?
So Fred Leonardo, building commissioner. Shelby, as far as, yes, Mr. Ansari is still in front of the planning board trying to work out some details on the actual development.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that the fees would interrupt that process in itself.
Okay. I didn't think so either, but it's more administrative. Okay, and Christy, can you confirm that, I think from our last vote, that these units are in perpetuity?
I believe that they are. Farouk can probably, yeah.
Farouk or?
Yes. That's how, Farouk, you're on mute. That's how DHCD typically does these now.
I forgot to unmute myself.
That's
yes,
okay.
They are in perpetuity. Thank you, all 3 of them.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Would the board like to
Make a
make?
motion if you want.
Yep, sure.
I'll move to waive the water and sewer connection fees for the 3 affordable units at Village Commons.
Edinburgh seconds.
Okay, Alan, thank you. Okay, any discussion by the board? Okay, Selectman Johnson,
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh,
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi,
Yes.
and Selectman Marshall, yes, 400. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Asari. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay. All right. Next agenda item, sorry, just scrolling here, is the presentation of the Complete Streets Policy. This is a discussion vote agenda item, and I'll turn it over to our DPW director. Hi, Chris.
Hi, good evening. Chris Pant, Director of Public Works. So the Board of Selectmen, tonight you have in front of you the Complete Streets Policy. If you remember last January, so quite a long time ago, we submitted to Mass DOT a letter of intent indicating that we would develop a Complete Streets Policy, which is part of the process of becoming a Complete Streets member with the state. So that happened a year ago, and now over the last summer and into the fall, we worked with a number of town staff and the BPAC chairman to develop this policy. Bill Scully, who is online with us, is our consultant who helped us work through this. He's going to give you just a few minutes overview of the policy, and then we'll be happy to take any questions on the policy itself. So, Bill, over to you. You're on mute, Bill.
All right.
There we go.
Am I able to share my screen, or Chris, did you load anything?
I'll pull it up for you.
Okay. And good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. I think Chris and I got in to see you before everything went haywire, but we've been carrying on and conducting the study virtually, and good meetings, and so it's gone well. Chris, if you can go to maybe the third slide. So I'll just quickly touch on some key parts of the Complete Streets Policy, but I just wanted to just refresh everyone's memory on Mass DOT's program. So that's what this is sort of gearing up into, their grant program, and they've set it up with 3 tiers. The first tier is to have a policy and then a plan. And if you don't have a policy or a plan, then you cannot submit a grant application for what's called Tier 3, which starts to award a good size grant money for starting to implement actions that'll be part of the plan. So the policy does become an important element. And as Chris said, we had a letter of intent, which gave a year to develop it. We've prepared a couple of version drafts back and forth with the committee, and refined it over the last month or so. And now we feel it's ready and set for you. And so I'm going to touch on a few things. The policy has been formatted to include elements that MassDOT looks for and scores. So MassDOT they're not going to change your policy, but they will score it according to their criteria of how well it addresses a number of things. And these 6 bulleted items are the main components of the policy. And I'm not going to go through each one, but I am going to touch on the vision, purpose, and commitment, which are 2 of them. That's on the next slide, Chris. So, a vision is basically saying, okay, why and how are we doing this? What's the purpose? We want to show a commitment that Complete Streets is important and would be applied throughout the community. And as you can see down in the 3rd bullet, move towards a safer, better, connected transportation network in the long run. Doesn't mean everything happens all at once, that you turn a light switch on and you become just a complete street kind of community, but the word connected is very important to them. So a neighborhood connected to the center, or the connected to a school area. So those kinds of things, or a walkway connected to the transit system. And I know the transit system is a little off these days because of the COVID, but those kinds of things they look for. And the policy would apply not only to town projects, but state projects. So, not that the town can tell the state certain things, but as the state starts to improve projects that are under their jurisdiction, it does provide the ability then to go and work with them and say, hey, look, we're doing our part on complete streets to make sure we have a sidewalk or a crossing, or, et cetera. The next slide I wanted to touch on were, they're called exceptions. So you don't want to get hung up on, and none of the communities in the state want to get hung up on. And right now there's probably about 200 and I think either 20 or 240 communities now that have a policy. But there's some instances where you want to be able to do your job and your work without getting hung up on, oh, geez, we can't do this because we have the policy. What do we have to do? So those include things that it might be facilities where either the law prohibits certain modes of travel, or it's kind of like maybe somewhat dangerous. But I-495, granted, you're not going to be planning for I-495, but a road like that prohibits, in theory, walkers and bikers on the highway. Probably the most important part of this is the ordinary maintenance projects in the road, whether it's resurfacing or you're replacing a water line or a sewer line, digging up the road. The policy is not going to force you into then, oh my God, we have to change everything because we're doing fix-up. So there is an exception in there that allows for ordinary maintenance can proceed. And the only thing that the policy might do is it gets department heads and people working in the town to sit there and go, okay, we are resurfacing the road. Is there any opportunity or thing that we might do that is consistent with our complete streets policy? And that might just be as simple as striping the road a little differently than you did before. Anyways, there's a series of exceptions in there in a process that's defined in terms of feeling, if you feel like you needed to get an exception and have everyone on board, then there's a process. And then the last area I just want to touch on was implementation. So while the policy does include those other things, it includes best practices. We've provided information in there that just is available at people's fingertips on, maybe striping the road, or best practices on slowing traffic down passively, or safe pedestrian crossing kind of designs. So we've included some information in there that become a resource to whether it's DPW or planning or some of the committees in terms of being able to apply certain things to actions. But implementation in that, so we in the plan there's a committee, and it's probably an existing committee. The board would designate an additional task to periodically look at the Complete Streets program. How is it doing? Are we making progress? Are there any issues that come up? Maybe even modification of either policy and or plan, or additions of the plan later on. The implementation, there's a paragraph in there of, over time, the various departments that have certain regulations that could relate to Complete Streets would start to modify their regulations just to make sure everything is consistent. Again, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but as the planning board might be reviewing their site plan review process, now they have a policy that they can fall back on and go, okay, is there anything we need to add to our site plan review process that makes us more consistent with the Complete Streets policy and our goals. So that's in there. And then, that committee that would be looking at Complete Streets could also be available for consultation or advisory opinions. A different committee is working on a project or a department's working on a project. They might want some input in building support for certain actions and get some feedback. And I think that is it. I wanted to be fairly quick. I know you've had a copy of the policy before you, and I know we provided a lot of detail early in the year on Complete Streets. So I'm done. Chris, if you have anything to add.
I guess the only comment I would make is that beyond this policy, the town, I think, at least recently, has already really embraced the idea of Complete Streets, regardless of whether we adopt this policy or even if we weren't applying for a grant money down the road. I mean, I'm part of the Climate Action Plan working group, and I know that transportation and pedestrian mobility is a big part of that. We're all members, most of us are members of the Master Planning Committee, and I'm a participant in the Transportation Working Group or Subcommittee, which is also has a big focus on mobility for bikes and pedestrians and vehicles. So I think we're already doing this. This is formalizing it, and it's formalizing it in order to for good reason, but also really to allow us to enter the program that MassDOT sponsors that could allow us to access funds down the road. So anyways, I guess that's all we have, unless there's any questions or comments.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Scully. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. I'll open it up to the board for questions.
Shelby, this is Syed.
Alan,
Syed can go.
okay, Syed, go ahead.
First, I wanted to thank Chris for bringing this forward back to the board. This is just a great policy. And I also want to reiterate a point that Chris made. I think, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, in the master plan, the initial study that people did on walkability or mobility in town, it showed that there was a significant drop. I mean, at least in the study that was done, there was limitations of that. But since then, there's been an increase in, with the pandemic and everything, more people are out on the streets, more people are moving around, and the data is reflecting that, at least the data that I've seen. I don't think it was in the master plan. But I think it puts a real impetus on us to ensure that our residents can walk around in their neighborhoods and can walk to school safely. I think that's, so thank you for bringing that up. The other thing and this is just a minor thing, in your performance metrics or performance measures, you have in there a bullet about number of pedestrian and cyclist related crashes. So I know that there's a priority that you give, for instance, how close something is to a school. I understand that. But does the fact that like a particular area, intersection, or neighborhood have higher rates of crashes, is that going to impact, how we're going to look at whether we're going to do something about that or prioritize that? That's one. The second is, I believe at least the CMPPO was discussing this several months ago, that there's going to be like a regional plan looking at regional performance metrics. So I'm wondering, because we're part of that CMPPO, we're part of that process, are we going to like adopt certain measures of, hey, this is our, like for instance, this is our rate of pedestrian accidents, this is our rate of vehicular crashes, and as a part of our Complete Street process that we are going to aim for a X% reduction over X number of years?
To your first comment regarding looking at the data and identifying hotspots, I think absolutely we pay attention to that. One, as you said, is just an important thing to do. But two, when we submit for funding, especially if it's grant funding, Complete Streets or otherwise, often a criteria is, or a important piece of the criteria that they use to make selections is, are you resolving a problem? And so if we have problems at intersections and, various locations like you identified, those are important things we want to fix. And we get, speaking specifically to grants, we're more competitive when we're addressing those problems, which in my mind makes sense. Regarding the CMRPC or MMPO performance metrics, I haven't seen any specifically, but I am a member of the CMRPC advisory working group that advises the MPO. And so I think anything that we do see, we certainly will adopt if we think it's appropriate for Westborough. But I can't speak to any specific metrics as I haven't seen any.
Yeah, I'll just add just a couple of points of clarification. So what was talked about and put a question out was really related to how we've been developing the prioritization plan. So we are looking at where current crashes are occurring, where are they near, and the committee's working together to identify at least an initial set of priorities based on a number of different things, not just crashes in a neighborhood, but a number of things to set priority. The performance measures in the policy, first of all, they're draft measures. The committee that becomes responsible for complete streets would have the ability to, select from what's listed in the policy or add some, delete some, whatever. But the point of the performance measures in the policy is, not to place a big burden on the committee, but you want to measure process as simply as possible. So let's say, for an example, today you have, don't quote me on this, I'm just saying unofficially 30 pedestrian and bike crashes around the community involving a vehicle and a pedestrian or a vehicle and a bike. And as you start to implement your program, trying to slow traffic down, make pedestrian crossings safer, designate bike lanes, well, down the road, you don't want to still see 30 pedestrian and bike crashes. So it becomes an easy measure to collect and a way to see, are we making some progress? And that's the same with all the measures that are at least outlined in the policy right now. I mean, if you're adding sidewalk, it's very easy to say, we've added 2,500 feet of sidewalk, we're making progress. So again, the performance measures on how we doing, you want to make sure it's relevant, but easy to collect and simple and not place a big burden. And we are doing those priorities as the plan actions are being discussed.
Okay. And can I ask one more question, Shelby?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Okay. And so there was in the policy that, in your policy, I believe it's on, and you referenced this, I believe it's on page 2. It says state-owned roadways and associated projects should also comply with the state complete streets policy to the extent feasible and practical, right? I just love that. I think that's just wonderful. My question is, can we as a town then use this policy or this statement to, for instance, advocate? For instance, I don't know if you're aware, but there's Otis Street and Route 9, which is the second highest place of accidents in our town, and it's right opposite a large residential complex, and those residents cannot cross the street to go to the MBTA station, which is literally right across this road from them. So can we, for instance, by adopting this policy, potentially start a conversation with the state to get us a crosswalk at the Otis Street Route 9 intersection?
So the simple answer is yes.
Okay.
In the process we've been going through, that has been an area that we've talked to. Certainly the Complete Streets program is geared, the way the state has set it up, it's geared to the town roads. But we've talked about getting walkers and bikers down Otis Street to the T as part of the plan. And certainly that big apartment complex across the street, you have to get them across the street. So
right. I mean, you have to realize that, the MBTA station is literally across them, and they can't walk there.
Exactly. So yes, you can certainly, it gives the town a lot better ability to go to District 3 and say, hey, come on, we got to get something going here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Alan, you had some questions?
Yeah, so can you just give a brief view? First of all, I want to thank Chris. He actually answered one of my questions with the relation with the master plan, and it does seem tightly coordinated, so I appreciate that. The prioritization phase, which is step 2, can you just give an overview of that as the next steps, as this is a policy but not an implementation?
So if you remember, Bill up front talked about the 3 tiers. So this is tier 1, the policy. Tier 2 is a prioritization plan. So over the course of the last several months, the Complete Streets Working Group, which comprised of BPAC, fire, police, across the town staff, pulled together a list, big Excel spreadsheet kind of thing with projects that have been identified across the town. And if you remember, over the summer, we had the Complete Streets wiki page where residents could go to the page and add, various hotspots where they thought we needed something corrected. So all of that data was collected. Bill and his team took it, consolidated it, put it in this master spreadsheet. And from my perspective, even if we never do anything beyond complete this plan, even if we never submit for any funding, the benefit of this program is that we now have, or will have once it's complete, we now have this roster of 50 projects that we think are worth doing over the next X number of years. And the BPAC, now Active Transportation and Safety Committee, which needs a sort of name or something sort of, but anyways, that committee, along with us as a town, we have something to operate off of now, instead of kind of all these disjointed ideas that are out there that are great. We now have it in one spot. And so that's where we are. So that plan is drafted. We've got probably another month or two of work, probably another month of work to do on that, just to do some refinements. And then we will submit that to Mass DOT as tier 2. And that they look at it and give us their blessing on it. But regardless, the town now has a product that, we're recommending the Active Transportation and Safety Committee, use as their start point for giving recommendations to the town on, making progress towards some of these actions that need to be taken. And then we, as the DPW, most likely, but certainly other town staff, will then take that, direction and move out with, looking for funding and implementing when directed. So hopefully that summarized where we are with that.
Great, thank you.
Ian, you all set?
I am all set. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple follow-on questions. Great presentation. Most of my questions were answered. And I do want to echo what Alan already said, which was that I love the fact that there is a deep and tight connection to the Master Plan Committee, to the Climate Action Plan, not just Chris through your participation, but through that of others in, committee meetings and boards, et cetera. So this, as I read the policy, it really ties in so nicely with what I know what what the master plan sort of envisions to be, and doesn't hold it back, but yet very much supports it. So thank you. Simple sort of question: how would because Complete Streets this policy does say that it applies to private developers, so I was happy to see that in there. Maybe it's as simple as, because it's on the header paper and there's a phone number there, how will they know, how would a private developer know, where to go to ask questions about this policy and, adhering to it, or maybe complementing and enhancing the plan? Because it doesn't, I realize that's not the intent of the policy, but how would they know kind of where to go if they had questions about it?
It's a great question. And honestly, I think it's really going to fall upon us, at least initially, to educate. There's kind of a base crew of people that operate in the town. Certainly there's going to be new people down the road, but right now there's kind of a base group of developers. And so I think it's really incumbent on us as a town, probably some with the DPW, probably some with the committee to, and through the planning board and other processes they have to go through we're represented on those groups. And so I think we have to, at least initially, we're gonna have to educate people and make them aware of it. So it's I mean, we can say there's a policy out there, but people tell them about it and all that sort of thing, then certainly.
Right.
And as the developers come in with subdivision plans or need site plan review or 40B projects, they're going through, planning, DPW, the planning board or zoning board. Now, over time, you might have, as I said earlier, maybe Jim is able to get in the site plan review a line in there that says something about complete streets. What I've been doing with some of our projects, whether I'm doing the reviews for the communities or working on from the private side, if we know the town has a complete streets policy and many of them have their plan done, we may, number one, just raise the point of, okay, how can you, or is there anything you can do to show compatibility or consistency with the policy? And just something just really simple, make sure the sidewalk, you provide a sidewalk and it connects to the external road. Or maybe as part of their offsite mitigation, there's a piece in the plan that needs implementation. You don't have to just have public money put in your plan actions. You can, so I think as people go through that review process, it certainly will be up to the reviewers to bring that up, and especially before it gets really documented in the various procedures.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. It will definitely take some education along the way, and which sort of leads me to my next question, which was, is there training that's going to be necessary for the Active Transportation Safety Committee and or town departments as it relates to implementation of this policy?
There is training that some DPW staff, like myself, have already attended, and I know that there are members of the BPAC or the old BPAC that have attended as well. It's regularly offered through Mass DOT. Okay. And so certainly there will be need to educate more people, but I think we have a base foundation right now that already exists in terms of people familiar with what we're trying to do.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think this becomes part of sort of the language, right, and how we look at things, and maybe through a slightly different lens. One final question for me regarding performance measures. Do we have current statistics? I'm not asking for them. I just want to know for the 6 measures that were presented, do we have those as part of work that's been done so far? So like the number of curb ramps or accommodations, et cetera.
So the way it's written is from the time you adopt this, okay, how many have been installed or built from the plan, or once you started to implement? So there probably is a full inventory. We have an inventory of a lot of areas that need them and some that had them. Chris might have a full number, but you don't need to start with, how many do we have now? Going forward, how much of the plan have we addressed? And this action included 24 new ADA ramps, 5 feet of sidewalk, and et cetera.
Okay.
But what this is going to help us do is get that information that right now is in various different locations. Yep. The intent is to consolidate and have kind of a common picture for everybody in terms of where we're trying to go, and being able to present to you or whoever else, kind of updates on what's actually happening.
Well, because I would also imagine, Chris, that also drives maintenance, right? So once you have sort of an inventory of what you have, you understand sort of the lifespan of the ramp cuts, whatever those things are called for, ADA accessibility, right? And you know that, they've got a lifetime of 10 years. And so these are going to need to be replaced. So that becomes part of your planning. Okay.
Right.
All right, great. Thank you. Those were my questions. great, well-written policy. Very excited to see this coming forward. Would anyone like to? Oh, yes, Syed, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to just follow up on something that I believe it was you that raised. I just was wanting some clarification. So if a developer is building a new development or subdivision or something, is this policy something that the planning board can then refer to with regards to mitigation? Am I understanding this correctly? Or would they be? Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
I would say, yeah, once you have this policy, it's a town policy, and the planning board can use it at how they want. It certainly gives them now the ability to ask for something that's consistent with the Complete Streets program.
Yeah, and so just for point of reference, that's on page 2 of the policy. And, I think it's a great addition because it does give them absolutely a tool to kind of refer back to and to kind of engage in a way that enhances the community. So it's great. Okay, just given the time, so would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the Complete Streets policy as presented.
I second that.
Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion of the board? Okay, Selectman Johnson.
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh.
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi.
Yes.
And Selectman Marshall, yes, 400. Mr. Scully, Chris, thank you very much. Really appreciate the presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening. Have a nice holiday.
You too. Okay, we're going to turn our attention to Hockomock Pond and our Conservation Director, Jordan McCarran. Jordan, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks. I have a very brief presentation I put together just to guide me through this update. I've not done this before. I assume I click present now. Okay.
Alan will guide you.
Okay.
Click present now and pick your screen and say share.
All right. I've got one screen, so. All right. Are you all seeing a PowerPoint presentation?
Not yet.
You need to change which window is visible on your screen.
Okay.
So Alt Tab if you're on a PC.
Yeah, I'm just on a laptop. I've only got one screen, so I'm not exactly sure.
So just make sure you're seeing the presentation.
Okay.
There you go.
Jordan, yep.
How's that?
It's coming. I see a big white screen.
I could see the tab at the top of your screen when you were sharing your screen before, but right now it's just, it's white.
Okay. Sorry about this, everyone.
No, that's okay.
So you can't see the PowerPoint presentation?
No.
Just see a white screen.
Let me stop sharing and see if I can. So if I do your entire screen, let me try that.
Whatever you do, don't have us in double vision. What single vision is bad enough for everyone to see.
I might. I don't know if that's what's going to happen here, but I'm gonna try to.
There you go.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, I'm gonna go into present. So
perfect. That's great.
Okay, good. So I'm just gonna give a very brief overview of the Hockomock Pond, super fun site and the ongoing remediation that's occurred at the site basically since the early 1980s. This is partially for my benefit because obviously I had to get up to speed on this, having only started here in Westborough in April. And I thought it would be helpful even for those of you on the Board of Selectmen, but the public as well. But Hockomock Pond is a 29-acre site. It's at the corner of Smith Valve Parkway and Otis Street. It's got historic groundwater and soil contamination, basically, or most notably, from creosote contamination from its use as a wood treatment facility. And this goes back to the first half of the 20th century. it was designated as a Superfund site in the early 1980s. And since then, there's been ongoing remediation of both the soil and the groundwater. And in 2017, the town, the Mass Department of Environmental Protection and the Environmental Protection Agency jointly signed what's called a Notice of Activity and Use Limitation, or a NAUL. And this document is really the go-to or the guidance document on what we can and can't do with the property. And then in 2019, the decommissioning of all of the groundwater remediation equipment and a complete decontamination of the building on the site, which housed all that equipment, was complete. How do I go forward here? That's oh, there we go. So just an aerial overview of the site. Obviously, Hockomock Pond is here. There is some wetland on the property. The building you see here, and this is a 2019 flyover, so you can still see the groundwater remediation equipment there. And then you've got basically two cleared areas, which one is a former lagoon that they used basically as part of their the wood treatment process, and the other is a former landfill. And the selected remedy that the EPA chose for this was essentially to cap it. So there's some kind of a membrane and then soil and grass on the top of those areas. I've just drawn your attention closer to the main areas where the remediation occurred. You can see the pond up here, Otis Street here, and Smith Valve Parkway there. So just a brief status update, and this might not be that new to any of you. I know this is ongoing, and I'm here to sort of give you some news, and I hope I can do that. But the EPA has approved the decommissioning report. It was issued in October of 2020, so just 2 months ago, and the EPA has determined that that the groundwater remediation system, its decommissioning and the decontamination of the building is complete, and to their satisfaction. So I had a meeting with a representative from the EPA and also from Beazer East, which is, what they call the potential responsible party, or the company that's, funding and doing all of the remediation on site. And the building is really ours to use now. The utilities have been cut, so we would need to reconnect to electric, water, et cetera. But the building is vacant. It's available for the town to use. How we can use it is dictated in this notice of activity and use limitation. That's specific to both the building and the site itself. And it's my understanding that the town has been given a key to the gate, and that the building again is available for us to use. I think the real question, see if I can move to my last slide here, is what should we and what can we do with the site and the building? I pose these questions and issues mostly because there are things that I don't know myself, but I'm assuming everyone kind of has these questions as well. The notice of activity and use limitation document doesn't specifically speak to the pond. It speaks to the areas of contamination, soil and groundwater contamination around the pond. It doesn't specifically speak to the pond itself, and that is something I probably will need to follow up with my contacts at Mass DEP, EPA, and Beazer about. Steve Bakari shared with me minutes from the September 16th, 1982 meeting of the Westborough Board of Health, where they did close the pond to all activity. Obviously, this was right at the start when the contamination was detected and, this process began. So I know there's sort of existing and probably outdated signage around the pond prohibiting use. But I think there is some ability for us to at least passively recreate on the pond, but I need to find out more about how we can do that and where we can do that, because I know some of the creosote contamination did impact the shoreline. I think the southern perimeter of the pond. There's been, I know, questions about whether we can take down the perimeter fence, and the simple answer is we can, but there are some areas, and I'm going to go back. Sorry about that, everyone. I just want to go back to this slide here. There are a few areas, the former lagoon area, the landfill, and there are a number of active monitoring wells that will need to be sort of protected, or access will need to be restricted from those areas sort of indefinitely. And I think the question is, what does that mean? I mean, the notice of activity and use limitation prohibits, vehicular access and excavation and, activities that are intuitively you wouldn't do on the top of a capped landfill or a capped, hazardous waste site. But whether or not we can have a passive recreational trail go over an area like that, is a question that, needs to be answered. So again, the perimeter fence can come down, but there are certain areas where I think that they're going to want to keep, and it might not be a fence, it may be bollards or, boulders or some other way to restrict at least vehicular access into those areas. And I think just as a final point, I mean, my understanding is that, we now have access to the building. We have access to the site. We need to develop a plan, obviously, and we've got guidance in this notice of activity and use limitation document. But really, I think we need to have another meeting with officials from the EPA, Mass DEP, and BEZR to sort of establish sort of precisely what we want to do, where we want to do it, and then understand from them where the areas are that they will continue to need to monitor and restrict at least some type of access from. I'm just looking at the NAUL now, and it's broken into two sort of sections: activities that are consistent with the selected remedy, right, and activities that are inconsistent. And it's fairly intuitive, although it doesn't. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. It doesn't specifically cite passive recreational trails, right? And to me, it's intuitive that you can do that because that does not require the type of uses that are inconsistent with the selected remedy, like excavation, et cetera. But there is a section here that speaks to, just trying to find it, that speaks to other activities or uses which, in the opinion of a licensed site professional, shall present no greater risk of harm to health, safety, public welfare, or the environment than the activities and uses set forth in this section. So I think one question is, should the town, contract with a licensed site professional to look at what we want to do and make sure that it's consistent with the uses that are cited in this document. And the other question I've got from at least one member of the public is, how do we know for sure that the site is safe to use? The EPA has certified that it is, and Mass DEP as well. But I think one decision we could make as a town is, do we want to have kind of a third party look at that documentation and determine or concur that it is safe to reuse how we want. So I don't know if I, revealed anything new, but, as far as I can tell, again, the site, all of the groundwater treatment equipment has been decommissioned. The building has been decontaminated. It's available for our reuse. And I think at this point, we just need to decide what we want to do with the site.
So So the reason that I asked Jordan to come on was to give an update. We've certainly talked a lot about this over the years, and with the recent developments, we wanted to give an update to the full board. You did, and I think I put that in your packet, you did appoint a committee maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago to talk about Hockomock reuse, but they were sort of awaiting this announcement that Jordan has provided. And so I think that this committee would start meeting at this point, working with Jordan. Jordan, as the conservation director, is appointed to the committee. So he would just remain on the committee and work with them as the liaison to the EPA and BZER. So this was really just for your information.
Great update, Jordan. Lots of work to be done. And I know the committee I've talked with several members, they're anxious to get started.
Indeed, yeah. And I know the Open Space Preservation Committee is interested in passive recreational opportunities and potentially on the pond too. Again, I don't know what limitations we have to allow people access to that part of the site, but certainly with the commuter rail so close, the potential to be able to get foot traffic through there is good, So
Great.
Anyway, thanks everyone. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the update. Good job sharing your screen. Thanks, Jordan.
You bet.
Shelby, if I could just say, this is really exciting news. It's really something the town has been working on for years. It's, the work to be done. You don't want to have a super fun site in your town, but the fact that all this is going on for the last basically 40 years of work to get to this point is exciting. It's exciting to, as Jordan said, figure out what we can use that property for and determine some of those things. I think from a lot of people would love to get the fence down, but if the fence is necessary, then parts of it stay. But hopefully we can figure it out and get it down so it really makes it a more welcoming site. And it is actually a beautiful site for passive recreation. So hopefully it all moves forward. But I just wanted to also say thank you to Jordan and our family that actually swam in Hockomock before we're still here, so I guess that's okay.
Well, there you go. Ian is our third-party representative. There you go.
Right.
Money.
Well, you should close your mouth when you do that again, Ian.
Yeah.
Well, they indicated to me multiple times during my phone call that it doesn't have to be a fence, and because that creates a visual barrier, which it is a beautiful site. I think to restrict access to the former lagoon and landfill area can be done another way.
No.
But I think the key here is just to have someone that can communicate with the EPA and be a liaison, and I'm happy to fill that role. So I think we can move forward on this.
Well, I think there's a lot of positive public interest here, so we'll get that committee up and going. That's great.
Great. Well, happy holidays. Thank you.
Yeah, to you as well. Thanks, Jordan.
Yep. Bye.
Great. All right, running a few minutes behind, we'll turn to agenda item number 7, request for innkeeper lodging permit from Azad Patel. Azad Westborough LLC. Sorry about that. Christy? Want to just introduce it?
So this is an innkeeper license for, I just had that. Sorry about that. For the Westborough Inn at 4 Boardman Street, which was sold to Azad Westborough LLC. So they've provided all of their documentation for your review prior to awarding the innkeeper license. We did send it out to the fire department and the police department as well as the building department for their review, and they have offered a response. They are still looking for them to complete some outstanding items. And so they have recommended that if the board were to award the innkeeper license, that it be conditional on the outstanding work being completed by February 1st, 2021. And you do have Fred Leonardo and also Chief Purcell on the call.
So I'll ask Chief Purcell, Fred Leonardo, if there's any comments they want to add to your introduction, Christy, before the board asks theirs.
You unmuted yourself.
Nope. Oh, Fred, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Fred Leonardo, Building Commissioner. So, no, I've checked. I went out with the fire department and Bill Hazlitt on the initial review of that the end. We had some minor things, so Bill Haslett, the assistant, is still working through those, but nothing major. So as Christy had mentioned, as long as they're wrapped up by February, we're okay with that.
Chief Purcell?
So my only thing that I just wanted to, I didn't make this part of the packet as a condition of issuing a license, just something to bring to your attention, perhaps to pay attention to over the next year or so, as the volume of calls for service at that location. I ran some statistics. I've been paying attention to it. In 16 years, from 2004 until this year, there's been 18 calls for service. And since in the last 8 months of this year, there's been 22 calls for service. So more in 8 months than there has been in the last, pardon the radio in the background, in the last 16 years. That's from the fire department. And from the police perspective, there was 18 calls for service for the police, and they were, unfortunately, a lot of them were traffic related, and I think they utilized that address as a vicinity for motor vehicle stops. There wasn't anything high acuity, and there's been 17 calls for service just in the last 8 months alone. Everything for disturbances and domestics. I believe there was a weapons call there. So probably something that the board needs to pay attention to in the next year, and just have that information for your situational awareness. That's it. Thanks. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to welcome Mr. Patel to the meeting. Well, is it Katan?
Yes. Hi. How are you guys?
Welcome. If you'd like to take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and your purchase, that'd be great.
So my name is Keaton Patel. I'm with Azad Legacy Partners. We purchased the Westborough Inn in September 1st of this year. It was brought to us by a broker that we purchased some additional hospitality assets from, and he thought we'd have interest in it. I think the previous owners were just feeling a bit fatigued from ownership and also probably COVID-related sales. We had a similar issue of a hospitality product we took over in another town where there was some elevated police calls. It was in the city of Woburn. It was drastically different volume. It was quite an elevated number of police calls that were happening to the town. We actually skirted that off to just a couple of calls. Their previous volume was in the hundreds. I would be curious to know the volume that was kind of just spoken about previously in the past 8 months. Is that, like, has it been elevated since our ownership, or we're kind of happy to play hand in hand and make sure that we're the eyes and ears, and we it's our job to know who's in our properties and to know who's kind of know your guests kind of thing, right? So we want to make sure that we're a benefit to the town and an amenity rather than a detriment. And I know there's some outstanding issues with that both gentlemen had spoken about in regards to some sprinkler items that were brought to our attention. We did do our inspection, and there was some items that need to be cured. We have impact fire coming in to remedy those, and then any conditions that are requested upon the building department, we'll try to remedy those as soon as possible. And we're just excited to kind of have a vaccine out there, and hopefully we can start seeing some tourists start traveling just generally everywhere, right? And especially at this time of the year when, I'm used to particularly seeing all of my family members, and not having that ability is kind of, it's not the most joyous feeling, but it's nice that we can even do stuff like this and kind of get together. But that's about it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Well, as chair of the board, I want to welcome you to Westborough. Thank you for attending this meeting, and I do encourage you to continue a relationship with the various town officials that you've already probably met, and to continue to build that relationship, because I think that forges strong community bonds and creates benefit to all parties. So and they're good folks, and they want the best for the residents in the town. So I'll open it up to the board for questions. Yes, Ian, please.
Yeah, Shelby, you hit a lot of it. So welcome to Westborough. And I think from the notes that we had from our building department and fire, that you have been working great with them and really remedying a lot of the stuff that was brought up with these final things. I guess the first question is, if we, at the recommendation, give you until February 1st, is that something that you think is achievable on your side to get the remaining things remedied in that time frame?
I think so. I think that a number of the items that were brought to our attention in regards to the sprinkler system are going to be remedied pretty soon. We had a bit of trouble we had to hire 2 different companies, but we were able to kind of facilitate everybody. There was some latency from, even it took 60 days from us signing a work order with Encore Fire to have somebody come out. And then we had Impact Fire signed off just because, there's some supply chain issues, I think, with just people at the moment too, and the way things are going. So I appreciate the latitude, and I think it should be more than sufficient amount of time to get it done.
That's great. Thank you. And I think just echo what Selectman Marshall said is from what our chief said, it's something we take seriously here in Westborough, but it's not a condition here, but since he's brought it to our attention as a board, we'll be keeping an eye on it. But I'd love to have you maybe reach out with our fire chief and police chief. And it sounds, I'm taking you at your word for it. It sounds like you don't want that either, and we'll work to remedy any situations that may be there. So I appreciate you doing that. And but feel free, as like Marshall said, they're folks in town here. We're good people. They're very good people, and want to work with you and make you successful. So continue to reach out to them.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Syed, I see you're off mute. Did you have a question?
Yes. Actually, I first, again, welcome to Westborough. But I don't think we answered Mr. Patel's question. I think one of the questions that he raised was about the cause. Was this before them taking up ownership, or before he took the ownership, or after? So do we have that information? It would be helpful if we did.
Sorry. Well, I'll let Chief Purcell answer that.
What was the date that he took ownership again?
September.
It started in April.
It started increased volume of crime started in April, or sorry, so I should say
it's not all crime. It's mostly medical calls.
Mostly medical calls, but in April.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the time of the pandemic, right? I mean, that's right when right?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
We did notice a raise of calls, just a surge this year throughout our properties. It's not to you can't mask everything with COVID, right? Like everything's not COVID related, but but we did receive I want to say a volume of calls was definitely increased post pandemic, or like right after the pandemic was kind of placed out there. Orders were given. The caliber of guests materially changed that you'd see coming into the hotels. Just a lot of things kind of that you wouldn't see normally, and especially even given the quaintness and this particular property, right? It's obviously a nice inn. It's been kept up pretty well. We do want to do some improvements that we will be asking the building department about, to do some nice renovations, pretty much FF&E, and kind of give it a little bit more of a nice flair to it. That's part of the acquisition on our part, but we did notice an increase just portfolio wide on these types of calls. So I was just curious if it was kind of synonymous with what we've been seeing.
Thank you. Syed, any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. I actually, Mr. Patel, you started to touch on it. I was just curious if you do have some plans for the inn for improvements outside right now. I know it's snow, we've got snow, so now's not the time of year, but if you have any plans, we'd probably just love to hear kind of a short vision of that.
We would like to remodel all the bathrooms, and we would like to upgrade all the FF&E. So pretty much do a fresh remodel of all the rooms. Also the interiors. So we're we're actually finishing off another one in close proximity, and where we'd like to move onto this property. One of the questions that we would probably be posing is what type of signage could we kind of improve upon on the exterior that would not be, this property is awkwardly placed in a residential setting, so something that would not, the neighbors would be able to get on board with, and pretty much would like to softly upgrade the whole premises.
Great. I think it could use those touches, so that's great. And again, I think to Ian's point, Second Johnson's point, working with our town officials and then through the requisite boards as required, is a good course of action. I think that you'll find that they're helpful in working towards solutions. Might not be, the ideal sign maybe that you want at first pass, but usually
I think any sign would be a helpful sign.
Right, exactly. Okay, and it sounds like from Chief Purcell's comment, but what's your occupancy at this point?
Oh, it's single digits. So it's 26 rooms and 4 to 5 rooms a night. Would be a 5 would be a high marker. Okay, all right. Well, here's to a vaccine and better days, right? Agreed. And hoping. Yeah, for everyone. Okay. Whoops. Sorry. So I will entertain a motion from the board.
I'll move to approve the innkeeper's license for azad Westborough LLC at 4 Boardman Street. Conditional all work required by the building and fire department be completed by February 1st, 2021.
Edinburgh seconds.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion by the board, roll call votes. Selectman Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi?
Yes.
And Selectman Marshall, yes. 404 being present. Mr. Patel, thanks so much. Have a great holiday season. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Same to you guys. Thank you. Thanks for everybody's time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Okay. Apologies for running long for those that are joining us. I saw Steve on. Do we have other members of the Board of Health, Steve? Or are you the lone representative tonight?
No, I'm here as well.
Oh, I see Nathan. Okay.
And of course, Syed is still here.
Okay.
Alan will not be here tonight, but Nathan has volunteered to take over the chair responsibilities.
The chairing responsibilities. Well, he's sitting, so he's already ahead of it. That's
exactly.
Good.
To never escape.
All right, great. And I see we're also joined for this section by Amber Bach, our superintendent to the schools. So welcome, Amber. All right. Christy, do you want to introduce this?
Yep. So we're having the joint meeting because we had talked about the first thing on your agenda for the joint meeting is the town election, and so initially we had put a request in from the town clerk to move the election from the Tuesday that it's set for to the following Saturday. Upon further discussion with the town clerk and town council, we actually are just interested in leaving it on the Tuesday. However, we would like the board to set up the location to be at Memorial Hall. And that's something that we thought you would want the Board of Health to weigh in on, understanding that we're still in the middle of the pandemic. So Wendy's on and can speak to the process that she used before with voting, and then we would ask the board to vote.
Hi, Wendy, welcome.
I can't hear Wendy. I don't know if anyone else can.
Not yet. Yep. Okay.
Wendy.
Okay. All right. Jeez. Hi. So after what I wanted to talk about was the setup and the Board of Health. It would be the same setup, and I would do it like we did before, and have the Board of Health come in and just make sure that we've done it correctly and that it's safe for everyone to come in. I think having it on the Tuesday, the building's open, and so it's open longer hours. We're not reopening the building again on the weekend. And last time we had it from 10 to 2, and there were some additional changes that were made after we had our election for the whole state for local elections, and vote by mail was then allowed. But we weren't allowed to do that in June. So now they do allow voting by mail. So and they don't allow early voting in person for municipal elections. So it's really either you vote by mail or you vote on election day. And so I'm guessing that most people will probably want to vote by mail as they did before. And we had probably 80% of the people vote by mail. So that would be my suggestion. If we're here on a Tuesday, the building it opens at 10. So, we could probably have it from 10 to 4, if that's something that's agreeable to you. The only difference is we'll have ballots that come in through the mail, and those have to be processed election day at the polls. So any ballots that come in that up until the election day will have to be done. And so you have to kind of do that in between people voting. And I don't expect many people to vote in person, but, it's all a guess. I think most people will want to vote, just get an application and get the ballot and mail it in. But so I need a little additional time rather than 10 to 2 that we had before, maybe 10 to 4 when the building opens at 10. So that might be the time. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, if you want to.
So, Wendy, thank you, Wendy. When we originally talked about this and we had when we had a Saturday election, folks can just mute if you're not talking, that would be great. I think the 10 to 2, 10 to 3 worked. My concern is that there are still people working, and if we close the polls at 4, I think that I do think we have to have later hours for people that are working.
So the bylaws. So that's
what was that? I didn't hear it.
I didn't catch that, yeah.
It's
Wendy, if you can mute for just a minute.
Me?
Shows that. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. The time is I believe the time is specified, so it would be the 8 to 8. I'm just looking it up right now, but
Wendy, you're on mute, sorry.
They did allow us to change up until March 31st this year. So anything that they put in place for local elections back in June or July, takes us until this March. So we could reduce the hours to, when the building is open, say 10 to 7 or less, 10 to 6. I don't think we're going to be that busy, but that's, again, if that's what you think we need to do. We had 500 people vote in June.
500?
500. But about 100 were in person. So that's a long day. That's all I'm saying. It's a long day for people, but whatever you think is best.
Alan, I saw your hand first.
Yeah, I share Shelby's concern with folks who are working, and even if they're working from home, if they have to be online, if you will, all day, having an opportunity to come by either, if not before work hours, after work hours. School will hopefully be in session. or will be in some form or another. So our Westborough residents who are faculty will be working a full day, and they shouldn't have to rush out of school at 3 o'clock to vote by 4 if they wanted to vote in person. So if it was, I think it was current building hours, which is 10 to 7, I think that would provide enough of an evening and hopefully enough time early morning, day, and evening to get the mail-in ballots counted as well.
Yeah, no, that's plenty. Yeah, there would be plenty of time.
Yeah.
And a similar vein, I agree that, putting some evening hours to folks at work, but I mean, if we want it, it is a long day. I mean, I looked to Wendy, but I was thinking we could even do, if you wanted to hold it to like a 6-hour or 7-hour window, you could do like maybe 7 or 1 to 7 or something like that too, if that covers both sides. But if you're fine with 10 to 7, the more hours, the better too. But I was just throwing out the shorter time frame if we want to, knowing that I agree with you. I think we'll have many people vote, most people vote by mail, but giving those that do want to come in and vote in person time within the day, both day and evening would be beneficial.
Okay. I did write down 12 to 6 too, was another, but if you think 10 to 7, that's fine.
Dr. Walsh?
Yeah, so I just wanted to chime in. You guys are already thinking of it, but the longer the hours does have the added effect of spreading people out, as long as they're hours that people will actually use. And so in some ways, it's nicer to have that spread out. The other thing I just wanted to comment on was about the location. I think the town hall, with the numbers of people that we're expecting to have, I think is a fine location.
Okay.
And the more you encourage mail-in ballots, I think that's even better. So, for those people that might think they have to be at work or at school or, some other place, what is the process for obtaining a mail-in ballot? Is that just stopping by the town clerk's office ahead of time, and how far ahead do they have to show up?
Yep, they just request an absentee ballot application, and then we mail that out to them. They mail it back. We mail them the ballot. They mail it back, or they can drop it off. So it's pretty easy for them. For us, it's just a processing issue when people bring them in, and if we don't have a lot of time at the end of the day, then we're working later, which is normal for an election. That is what we do anyway. So I know what the turnout was in June, and it was very low, but that was also the beginning of COVID, and people maybe were more cautious to go out. Maybe now I don't know, maybe they're more willing to go out.
I think it's important that we err on the side of recognizing the bookends of lives and everything in between. So I think if your staff, Wendy, can do 10 to 7 on Tuesday, and we encourage, to Dr. Walsh's point, mail-in voting, hopefully there's a nice balance of all of that. And you've opened the majority of ballots, and it's just really a final, so to speak, tally at the end of the evening as the polls come to a close.
Right.
So Shelby, I'd make a motion that we.
Before you do, I am getting texts from people who are asking for early morning for morning hours. That it would be, given work schedules, to be able to come before work.
Well, normally we wouldn't open until 8 anyways for a town election. And the building technically isn't open to the public till 10, although we could open it if you think.
Yes, we can open it. We opened it for early voting, so.
Okay.
So, Alan, Ian, you're about to make a motion. I don't know if.
Well, yeah, I guess a discussion. I mean, do we want to go 8 to 7, or we're fine 10 to 7? It sounds, Alan, you're saying you're getting multiple texts of people that want an early morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we normally, I think we said normally do 8 to 8. I think we're shortening it by an hour on the back end. We should go 8 to 7.
Okay.
So,
Christy?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to find. I know I talked to Wendy about this before, and she had said that she received information that they had extended the order to allow for us to change the elections. I just had talked to town council, and they had not said that. So I want to be sure we then change the election time.
Guys, we really have to mute our phones if we're not talking because we're getting feedback here. So, Christy, can you just? I think I heard everything you said, Chris.
I just said that I know that Wendy had received information that they had extended the order into 2021 that allowed us to change the election time, but that's not the information that I received from town council. And so I just want to make sure. I just don't know if Wendy, if you know what the order is, before the board votes, you're on mute.
I got it from lead counsel in the Secretary of State's office. I asked her if we could continue to reduce the hours like we had 10 to 2 for the town in June. She said yes, but if you think we should go 8 to 8, that's fine. If that's what you want to do and if that's what people are used to, and everybody's in agreement with that, that's fine.
I guess that's the safe vote to have here then, is because that doesn't run afoul of anything. So I guess I'll move to schedule a town election for March 2nd, 2021 to take place at the Westborough Town Hall from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Edinburgh seconds.
Okay, discussion with any by the board at this point?
I just want to confirm March 2nd is the correct date, correct?
Yes, Tuesday.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll take a vote on this, and then we have another matter regarding elections to take care of tonight. So roll call vote. Selectman Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi?
Abstain.
Selectman Marshall, yes. So that's 3-0-1. Okay. All right, Wendy, thank you. And obviously, I mean, we'll have to continue to watch the situation, work with the Board of Health as the pandemic evolves. Christy, I need your help with the next matter regarding the ballot. Wendy, if you don't mind muting, please. Thank you. So late this evening, just before this meeting, the board received an email from Lee Emery. And unfortunately, due to personal circumstances and out of extreme respect for the good people of this town and the work of this board and the people that we represent, she is resigning from her duty as selectman effective today, December 22nd, 2020. So with that,
so in order to include, so obviously this was unforeseen, in order to include this seat on the upcoming town election ballot, the board needs to vote to place it on the ballot. And so that's something that you can do tonight, and then you would be able to fill the seat for a 1-year term at the upcoming March election that you have just voted on. And so...
Alan, you had a question?
Yes. If we were to hold the special election concurrently with the annual election, is there enough time for people to pull papers and get signatures?
The requirement is that is that you do it 15 days before the deadline for pulling papers, and so that you would have your upcoming deadline is December 28th. So we do meet all the required deadlines by voting tonight.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, we would not be having a special separate event election.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So your motion would be to call an election on March 2nd, 2021, and to add the remaining term of the new, now vacant position on the Board of Selectmen to the ballot.
So moved.
You have a second? I'll second it.
I will second it. Sorry, I was on mute.
No, okay. Thanks, Ian. Okay. Any discussion by the board?
No, it's just disappointing, and our thoughts go to Selectman Emery. I know this was not an easy decision for her, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely not an easy decision, but she's got a great spirit and has invested many years in this town and has strong roots, and she wants the work of this board, whatever its constitution going forward, to continue. And I have deep respect, and it's been amazing to serve with her. So with that, any other discussion on this motion? Okay, with that, roll call vote. Selectman Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi?
Abstain.
Selectman Marshall, yes. 3-0-1 for being present. Okay. Christy, regarding elections, are we all set?
Yep.
Okay. Wendy, thank you very much for, I just had one question regarding, so will the actual ballot that's mailed it will be one ballot for all of the open positions in town, including the one we just added, right?
Yes, it'll have, if you, like the trustees of the public library, they have candidates, there's 3 candidates for re-election, and then there's 1 candidate for an open seat to fill a vacancy. And that was Pat Fonts, who had left. So it would be the same thing. There'll be 2 seats for candidates for re-election, 3-year terms, and then there'll be 1 selectman for a 1-year term.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Great.
Shelby, just, it was a good question, if you don't mind. So basically, people coming in, though, they can pull papers for one or the other, correct?
Correct.
And they should specify when they're coming in what one they want to pull papers for, right?
Correct.
Yeah, they fill out a form.
Themselves on the hook for 3 years. Oh no, what did I do?
Right.
Trust me, this is so much fun. You want to pull the 3-year paper, trust me.
Yeah.
And final question on the mail-in ballots. I know that you'll probably have other updates, Wendy, along the way through the website, but when do they have to be? Is it a postmark date, or they have to arrive by? How does that work?
They have to be in the office on election day, no later.
Okay, and folks can drop them at that the black mailbox out front too, right? They don't have to go through the USPS, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Thanks so much, Wendy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Super. All right. So we'll move on to the next component of this agenda item, which is a discussion regarding the CARES Act and just update. Christy, I'll turn it over to you, and then you can run it from there. Hey, Leah, how are you? Good to see you.
I've been asked about the CARES Act money that the town received, and what the town is doing with that money. I know that there's a concern about whether or not the money is being spent. The town was allocated approximately $1.6 million through the CARES Act. That was one of several grants that the town received. This is obviously for reimbursement for costs associated with COVID. we have many people on here who received grants. Obviously, the school received grants that were directed to the reopening of the school and remote learning. The Board of Health also received a grant. The fire department has received multiple grants. And so all of these grants have to work together in the correct way in order for us to be able to access them. So the way the CARES Act works is that all of the other grants have to be used first. And so all of the grant that the school got had to be used first before they could access CARES Act funding. So to date, we're estimating that we'll be using about just under half of the CARES Act money, so just over $700,000. One of the things that you need to keep in mind is that we are also applying to FEMA for reimbursement for COVID-19 related expenses, and if any of those are not accepted by FEMA, then those costs would be then put towards the CARES Act. We got some really great news as long as the new federal stimulus package is signed into law, and that's that the CARES Act money, which was initially needed to be expended by December 30th of 2020, that deadline would be extended to December 31st of 2021. And so the fact that we have not expended all of our CARES Act money puts us in a really good position for COVID-19 related expenses going forward. We know that the school department is going to continue to have COVID-19 related expenses as they continue to be open in the hybrid format. Certainly we know that public safety has expenses related to COVID, and the Board of Health and Public Safety is also working on responding to and preparing for the vaccine and then how the town might respond to that. And so those obviously will be additional expenses that we didn't budget for. I would say that sort of in talking to our counterparts in other communities, a lot of communities are in a very similar situation as us, in that we've only expended about half of what was allocated. I am talking a lot about this, but Leah has really been the champion of these grants. She's doing all of the accounting. She's working with all the departments to make sure that we're appropriately spending the money and that we're getting reimbursement for all things COVID related. So in addition to the departments that you see on tonight, we've also had COVID related expenses with the town clerk's office related to elections. We've had expenses through facilities. Obviously, if you come into town hall, you'll see all of our plexiglass shields, hand sanitizer, anything that we can use it for, we do use it for. But we certainly wanted to be clear with the community that there is money remaining. We expect to have a need for that money, especially with the extension of the deadline. We're certainly working hard to make sure that that we're expending them efficiently. So I don't know if anyone has anything to add or any questions, but everyone's on to answer any questions that you have.
Go ahead, Ian.
Hey, Christy, you set up, I think, from the community, because I know that I've gotten these questions. I'm sure other selectmen have as well. Is this was a reimbursable grant, is my understanding of. So when people hear, 1.3 million, why haven't we? That's just money the town got. But again, I think it has to be clear that. And you mentioned that other grants have to be expended first, but then we have to present receipts. And I know, as you said, Leah is keeping track of it. But just to be very clear with the community that anything and everything that can, I know that is getting put through there, but it's not the same as just us getting 1.3 million and it's ours. It's really there's a process, documentation, all that work has to be gone through. I just want to make sure that the community understands that difference between the dollar amount and how we access that money.
Thanks.
Yep, Alan?
Are there any issues? I know some parts of the COVID-19 funding under the CARES Act expired December 31st. Are there any issues that the town is facing related to that?
Well, we're all just crossing our fingers that they extend that deadline. So that was the December 30th deadline was for all of the money. And it is clear in the federal stimulus package that it would be extended until December 31st, 2021. And so as long as that happens, we should be able to meet our COVID expenses with the remaining CARES Act funding and the other grants. I mean, there's other things obviously in the stimulus package with directed money to public safety and schools. So.
Shelby?
Yep, go ahead.
Can I ask?
Yep, go ahead.
So Christy, I'm wondering, I know that Chief Purcell has really done a great job on looking at reimbursement for EMS calls, but I'm wondering, because they're bringing potentially persons of interest or persons with suspected COVID to, first, I'm sure that they're taking more precautions now with COVID, but they're also potentially transporting patients with a potential exposure to COVID or with a COVID-related diagnosis associated with them. Is there a way that we are capturing those EMS calls, or is that being recorded somehow, somewhere? Go ahead.
I'm going to let Chief Purcell answer that question.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
So we get an email every single day at midnight for the call volume for that previous 24 hours. Depending on the type of call, the paramedics during their documentation would check a box if it was a COVID-related call. I could tell you that we transport COVID positive patients or COVID suspected patients multiple times every single day. Work closely with Steve daily, and we keep him in the loop of that, and it's also reciprocal. He provides us, which is required by statute or by policy, I should say, from Department of Public Health, with residential addresses for all suspected cases within the community. So we do get a heads up on that. But every call is also screened by the 911 dispatcher for COVID-related symptoms, and if the units responding are told that a patient screens in is positive, they take differing levels of precautions with PPE. But yes, we track
so will that
every
be
single piece of equipment. I'm sorry.
No, what I'm saying is, are we eligible to get reimbursed for those costs, Chief? Do you know?
Well, we get reimbursed already, no matter what the call is. We have an aggressive billing program here, and
right. Yep. Okay.
We don't leave a stone unturned.
Got it. And then
as far as the PPE, we have procured a lot of money through grants as well as through MEMA. So we don't bill direct for PPE because, frankly, we haven't paid for it. So we don't have any additional costs for that.
But you have access. You have access to these grants. You have access to them, right? Or the town does.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, Christy, correct me if I'm wrong. While the CARES Act has been extended, state and local funding, additional funding has not been done by the federal government. Isn't that correct? Additional funds to allow us additional, to get us through this crisis. That money has not been allocated. I think that was mine. Sorry.
Right. So there's no money. Right. So there's the extension of the money, that's the CARES Act money that's available to communities. And that actually came down through the state. And then but they are also including, and I don't know what this looks like yet, but have said that they're including money for school systems.
Okay. Thank you.
So certainly what the Board of Health is a joint meeting. If the Board of Health has questions for Christy or Amber or Chief Purcell, anyone?
Steve, is it appropriate to talk about the planned grant that we have for the first responders?
Oh, well, I can. I am working with Chief Purcell to set up a vaccination clinic for the first responders once the vaccine comes out. We've put an application with the state to vaccinate not only Westborough but many of the surrounding towns because they want us to do bigger clinics. They don't just want to give it to us for 50 people, 60 people. So the application went in Saturday. Chief Purcell has helped out tremendously in getting that in. And so we're just kind of waiting to see, not every application is going to be granted. There's a limited supply coming out in the beginning. I'm sure we'll get it at some point, but we're just waiting for see what happens next. So that's the next step in the process. We'll certainly vaccinate all of our first responders in addition to many of the surrounding towns. So that'll be good.
Yeah. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Purcell, for helping to organize this all. It really makes our community shine when we are the group that's organizing this for all of our surrounding communities. It's a really nice effort on that part.
Amber, I was wondering if you could just speak to sort of the ways in which you're feeling relief given the federal stimulus money as it relates to this extension. Christy has sort of spoken to that. We've heard from Chief Purcell, but if you could speak to how this kind of impacts how you were looking at your budget for the coming year.
Sure.
Current year and coming. Thank you.
First, I would say thank you to Christy and Leah, who's been just amazing in helping to navigate all of this and to work collaboratively. So thank you. Christy and I were speaking earlier tonight, and we were kind of doing a little mini happy dance, thinking that perhaps the extension of this grant alleviates cost impacts that would come to town meeting. We forwarded a free cash article of $421,000 to manage the offset of the secondary part of salary increases the second half of the year if the grant hadn't extended. And we had that would be mitigated, in the potential extension of that 1.6 and the remaining funds, at least a large portion of it. And I do think that we will see some additional monies from the state or federal level that will come directly to schools that we would then use to offset those impacts. And then school committee would be able to act to hopefully pass over that article, working with town meeting if it wasn't needed. So that would be a huge financial gain for us. Again, not impacting free cash. So that would be my most immediate recognition. That's a large sum of money. Of course, we would be hopeful that in getting some additional funds, we might be able to bring in some additional staffing support to do some increases in services in certain areas, but which we haven't done because we know that the cost impact in the second half of the year would have been unbudgeted for. So I think the acknowledgement, one, that these funds have really helped to sustain us through the crisis. I want to acknowledge that the dollars that were sent to communities were invaluable. So I think when we look at the impact, it's really mitigation of additional hits at the town level. So we're pretty pleased.
And just another question. I know in the private sector, there have been not only significant cost increases in obtaining PPE, but some supply challenges. I'm curious to hear from Chief Purcell. I'm sort of on behalf of the town, and Amber as well, and the schools, if you're seeing any impacts or, again, the supply chains and prices are probably very different on the municipal side. But if you could provide some insight, that would be helpful.
I'm sure, and Pat can speak to it as well for his department, but Kelly Giacopello, our buildings and grounds assistant manager, has a hospital-based perspective. And so she started tracking this way before, and we pulled the trigger on starting to order PPE as soon as we thought we were going to need it. So she shifted funds allocations very early and did some preliminary ordering from hospital chains that she had relationships with, and that helped us get a jump. And then once we received funding, she's continued to stock us very well. So currently we are well sustained through the close of the year and into the fall if needed.
As far as the fire and EMS goes, we were also able to look ahead, and we started planning in March for this, and we probably over-ordered early, which was beneficial because there was a lot of back ordering. But through the grant writing and getting really a lot of surplus funds right up front, we were able to procure a lot so we could plan for what's going on right now with the flu and COVID kind of colliding. So we have like more than enough PPE right now to take care of our department and the police department.
Great. And I assume that extends in some way to town staff as well. I mean, obviously the acuity level of town staff is different than, someone on your team. Are you speaking just for fire, public safety, or Christy, does the town have what its needs, cleaning supplies, that sort of thing, and kind of on the more day-to-day?
We have been able to order what we need. Plexiglass shields took a little more time that we put up, but they've been open to the public and are working well. So.
If I could just comment on one thing that we probably should pay attention to and kind of plan on is if we move forward with public vaccination in phase 4, we should probably start planning now for PPE for that. So at some point we're going to have to make a decision with the town manager and the public health department what our plan is going forward.
And certainly, Pat, we can talk offline about this, and Steve, but the schools have volunteered again to participate in any level of supportive planning needed for space or coordination or storage, and certainly leveraging we bought a lot of gowns and face shields. Like, we're very well stocked that we might be able to, certainly, depending on how many people we're hosting, Steve and Pat, to contribute some materials as well.
Great. Christy, is there anything else you want to
add? No, we don't have anything else to add. I think we just wanted to give an update and answer your questions. So thanks everybody for coming on.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the work behind the scenes to do all that you're doing. It's pretty unimaginable still to this day. So thank you. Okay. All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is to amend, far more dry than CARES Act, to amend the assistant civil engineer job description. Christy.
Actually, Kim's going to speak to this.
Oh, Kim, I'm sorry.
No problem. So similar to several of the positions you've seen in the past few months, this just reflects some updates for the assistant civil engineer job description. We're taking the opportunity while we have a vacancy before we repost it to just update some of the essential functions that are listed. You have both the current version, currently approved version, as well as the proposed changes. It really just updates it to reflect the functions that the position spends the most time and focus on. In looking at those functions, we didn't see anything in there that would fundamentally change where the position sits on our classification plan. That's it.
Thank you. The board has the descriptions, as Kim has shared with us. Are there any questions? Have a motion?
I move to approve the revisions to the engineering inspector, formerly titled assistant civil engineer, job description as presented.
And I'll second that, Selectman Johnson.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no discussion, no questions, a roll call vote. Selectman Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi?
Yes.
And Selectman Marshall, yes. 4004 being present. Kim, sorry about the short item, but you steal the show with a quick one. All right, Christy, town manager report.
Myself and the finance team, specifically Leah and Kim and I, have been working really hard to get our FY22 budget and capital plan out. So that went out to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee on Friday. It's also posted on the website. So if anyone wants to take a look, we used the same format that we used last year, the GFOA best practices. So it's easy to read, very user friendly. The capital plan is a result of our first year using the new capital planning policy. And so you'll note that there are some items on there that might have previously been on the capital plan, which is what we're really working towards with our new policy and process. We're working with town council to draft a chicken and rooster bylaw for maybe over a year. We've gotten a lot of complaints about different things related to chickens and roosters, and we don't currently have a bylaw. So there's a group of us working with town council. So it would be myself, Fred Leonardo, Melinda McKendrick, and others working on a draft of the chicken and rooster bylaw. And then we have some residents who are interested in giving information towards that before it would come to town meeting.
Christy, can I just ask a quick question on that? I know some residents have already reached out to you. Are you inviting comment from residents through this update, or has that group, I'm just not clear what you just shared.
I've been inviting residents. Some residents have already asked to be a part of that. So that's the group. Certainly at some point there would be an ability for the public to comment. I mean, in the past, it depends on, at this point, we're not sure where it's going to sit. If it's a Board of Health regulation, then it would go to the Board of Health, and then they would pass it, and they would have sort of the public process. If it's a zoning bylaw, then it would go through the planning board, and there would be a public hearing required. And if it just sits in our general laws, which I think our general bylaws, which I think is where we might be headed, there's no requirement for a public hearing prior to town meeting, but the board has held public meetings in the past to receive public comment. So I expect that we would do something similar if that's the path that we take. So, but at this point, it's not shared widely to receive comment because we're not at a point yet where it's ready for, just because we're still working with town council to make sure it's all legal and developed properly. So
okay, but there will be an opportunity for some public input in some format.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Christy, sorry to echo what Shelby's saying. So are residents encouraged to reach out to you, or are you? How's this going to work?
I mean, certainly residents can always reach out. I'm not putting this. It's not even in a completed draft form, so I'm not going to put it on the website for response. I think it's easier to have a good draft for people to comment on. Certainly people can reach out if they have thoughts about it, but at this point, I'm just giving an update that we're working on it, and it will be, sort of available as a draft becomes complete.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kim and John Sternberg applied for the local rapid recovery planning assistance grant on behalf of the Economic Development Committee. This is part of an initiative from the Baker-Plato Recovery Plan to revitalize downtowns. This is a grant for technical assistance, so we wouldn't receive money, but rather a consultant team with expertise on strategies to stabilize business districts would be working with the town if we were to get it. In the conservation department,
I'm sorry, Christy, what's the time, or Kim, when will they release the awards of that?
I don't know that they've put out a date yet. They're looking to do so relatively quickly after the start of the year. It's a non-competitive grant. And again, it's technical assistance, not funding.
Yep. Thank you.
My computer just froze. Sorry. The Conservation Commission has added a new conservation land and trails tab to their website. So it has maps of the town on conservation property, with also links to WCLT and SVT. And then they also have a new trail report form so people can notify the Conservation Department of any trail issues. So you can click right on that form and report in anything that you see. The Finance Department has recently had the tax rate certified by the Department of Revenue. They're working on mailing out third quarter tax bills, which will be due on February 1st. The Assessor's Office is preparing for January 1st personal property review of companies in town. And accounting also has just finished the annual workers' comp audit. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much. Chris, I don't think unless it's stuck somewhere, did you forward that to us? Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it yesterday.
Okay.
It's also on the website.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Lots going on as always. All right.
Yeah, Shelby, I think it came with the materials we had for executive session earlier. I think it was two attachments there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know what? Now I see it. All right. I thought that was. Yeah, thank you. Thanks
I almost missed it as well. That's why I went right.
Usually it's on email, so Christy has conditioned us, and then she broke the condition.
Sorry.
Pavlov's dog here. Okay. Issues and correspondence of the selectmen. I actually was going to pull up this really cool wheel. You press it and spin it and put your names on it, but I'm not going to do that. All right. First up, Selectman Edinburgh.
Okay, so Christy stole some thunder from the EDC with respect to the rapid recovery grant application. So that's a cool thing. Beyond that, just as there was a bit of chatter in social media this week about the lack of the holiday stroll this year. And just a reminder that the only reason the holiday stroll is not happening as it has in past years is because of the COVID-19 restrictions and issues around having large gatherings of people or even encouraging people in groups, large groups, to go into small businesses. So I'll remind everyone that the Recreation Department, working with the Westborough Spirit Committee and other volunteers, has put together a list of about 50 homes who've volunteered and are doing up their lights and their decorations to the hilt. And on the Westborough Recreation website, there's not only a brochure that lists the address, but they've actually mapped out a driving route that will take you very expeditiously through all the neighborhoods and to see all the homes. So that's certainly a way to celebrate and be in the holiday spirit. And then that's it.
Great. Thanks so much. Selectman Hashmi.
Sorry, I'm just coming off mute.
Yep.
The only thing I just wanted to say, this has been an extremely challenging year for many of us, and it has come with its own sacrifices and losses, some of which are just irreparable and devastating. And yet I'm almost always humbled by the strength of and the courage of those that I meet who have suffered the most, and I just am in awe of that. And so tonight, I guess my thoughts and prayers, and just I hope that the coming year is a better one, and that your burden is lightened. That's all I had.
Great, thank you. Ian.
Just a few things, updates. So I have had a couple of recent meetings and committees that I represent as Board of Selectmen. So Country Club Operating Committee, where I am, again, just a liaison there, not a member of that, but they continue their work. As folks know, our long-serving golf pro is retiring as of 12/31. So best wishes to Jack Nagosian on that. And work continues on the hopeful hiring of our new golf course pro. And so that was discussed at the meeting. Also discussed the contract for as things change and this becomes a town position. There's a lot of things that now come under control of the town and most of the Recreation Department. There was discussion in the meeting about the new contract, the 5-year contract that was authorized by town meeting for golf carts. So that is moving forward. I think the just so folks are aware, we're moving from gasoline-operated carts to electric-operated carts, which is great in terms of green community, et cetera. So there will be a little bit of work of kind of rewiring the cart barn to facilitate that, but that's is in process and things working as we get ready for carts to hopefully be available with the course open for carts as early as possible in the new year. Also, they have set the fees for the coming year for golf course memberships. So for those that are wishing to renew or to join as a new member, that information, the rates have been set and folks can begin to apply for that. And basically once, if the course is able to open for the winter like we did last year or earlier, once folks pay their memberships, they are, that membership takes you from the day you pay until the end of, until 12/31. So that's kind of the update there. Municipal Building Committee. So this is my first go around on that committee. So I did sit on the first meeting. A lot of work going in as they get close on the majority of time is spent on the Forbes building and closing, kind of final items out. Still working really closely on some issues that have been occurring for a while now on the HVAC systems and holding contractors responsible for that. So that was discussed at length, and that work continues, as well as a note of work around some of the final ADA type stuff, which we did just receive notification that we did for waivers that we asked. The majority of those were granted, so there's only a few ones that are remaining on that list for that to be done. So more to come as I get my feet under me in that committee. There's going in, and Shelby, I know you know it well, going in the first time and even though we've had access to that list, listening to what people are doing, it's a lot. So, but I am rolling up my sleeves and jumping in, and just thanks to the Municipal Building Committee themselves for helping me out and getting me up to speed as quickly as possible. The only final thing I would say is, we've had a couple of different winter storms over the past couple of weeks. One is a dreaded one of snow, rain, ice that was just a mess. And then a substantial snowstorm. And just once again to our town DPW, the work they did, the how our streets look, the safety of folks. I just wanted to just pass along words. I continually, or always, I get comments from folks of just how thankful they are and impressed with the work that's done. So passing that along as correspondence that I've received from residents, just saying thanks. So, and that's all I have.
Great. Thanks so much. I want to echo the thanks to DPW and all the crews for their work on the snowstorm. I did reach out to Christy and ask for to understand sort of the plan around Milk Street and the Rotary and some of the other downtown corners, and those were addressed. I think we just need to be aware that the downtown area on a good day is congested and people have difficulty sometimes navigating the Rotary. And with snowbanks, I appreciate our DPW director's attention to kind of the safety, in particular around those areas, and cleaning that up and skimming it down so that, kind of life and business could continue. So thank you for the good work there. I also want to just acknowledge, Alan mentioned that there's been a bit of chatter recently about the holiday stroll. There's been a lot of chatter on social media about the lighting of the downtown with kind of winter lights or holiday lights, however you want to phrase it. So I just kind of want to take a minute just to provide some context to where things are at. and sort of where they might go in the future. So just for the public's benefit, for the last 40 plus years, and it may actually be 50, so my fellow Rotarians might have a word with me after, but for the past 40 plus years, the Rotary Club has proudly provided the lights to light the downtown for the holidays in the winter season. The lights for a long time were actually strung by Rotarians on the old-fashioned poles, and Nelson Ball, as many of you know, was kind of one of the leaders in that effort. He actually donated the evergreen tree that sits on the Rotary right now. But as those trees have grown, pole stringing or hanging of lights was no longer practical. So the club turned to DPW for their support to hang the lights, and that's been a collaborative effort. So for the past several years, DPW has utilized its equipment and labor to string the lights not only on the trees in the immediate Rotary, but on West Main and 135. So this year, members of the Rotary Club met with DPW to prepare for the lighting. And during that meeting, it was recommended by DPW that a different course of lighting the trees would be taken. So the Rotary, following that lead and wishing to continue the time-honored tradition of lighting the downtown, researched options, and as this board knows, they came before us on October 27th to ask for the approval to change the lights from stringing traditional lights to what would be tree mounted uplighting. And it was understood, I think the club made it clear that we're going to see how this goes. We hope these lights work. We're going to watch it and we'll tweak it as we go. So the board approved that light proposal, and then the lights were mounted by the Rotary Club by an electrician. So the club then observed, as did the community, that the uplighting was not as vibrant as sort of everyone anticipated. And I know that there was an informal social media survey that was done of, hey, would you like to see the community, the town, if you will, bring back the lights? And over 300 individuals responded to the survey. I hope those 300 plus come out to vote at the town elections because it was nice to see such engagement. I'd love to see that level plus at town meeting and elections. But those folks wanted the town and the Rotary to bring back the lights. So I spent a significant amount of time exploring what options were available to the Rotary Club, and I'm a Rotarian, as well as working with the town to see, just what options were available at this point based on weather, timing. Ian, you already mentioned we were having a snowstorm, so, and we've got the holidays coming up, so timing couldn't be worse. That work included bringing down a professional lighting company to say, what do we need to do, to improve this situation? So, couple outcomes of that. One, this person is an arborist, and he said that the trees on the Rotary in particular, as well as all those on West Main, need significant pruning before any lights would be strung, going forward in the future. And so I think that that's something that our DPW department, they're aware of it, and hopefully that will be taken into account going forward. Failure to do so could cause safety issues, for passing motorists and lights hanging down, that sort of thing. He also recommended that the lights be moved up further into the trees. So the Rotary Club this past weekend went out and spent several hours moving the lights up. The lighting is improved, but it's still not where it needs to be. And that's because the 4 lamp lights, particularly those on the Rotary, are washing out, plus the floodlight on the flag is washing out the color of the lights. I would love for the town to explore the option of turning off the 4 street lights at the Rotary, just to understand whether or not it's even an option. But I do understand that safety may be a concern by both our police and fire chiefs. If safety isn't compromised and we have this plan going forward for lights, then I think we need to kind of figure out a plan, because what we have is not appealing to the downtown. I mean, meaning, it's kind of a washed out effect. So we might not be able to do anything now, but I do think as a Rotary Club, as a town spirit committee, we've got to come together and kind of have a plan that is more effective than, what we have right now. I do know from speaking with Christy, she was aware I was going to bring this forward, that the chiefs are not in favor of turning off those lights because of safety reasons. So I certainly respect their opinion. I guess I'll be candid and say, without even trying and understanding kind of what impact it would have, I'm a little disappointed, but I certainly respect their opinion. But I wanted the public to understand kind of the nuance of this whole thing. It's not the town's responsibility specifically to light the downtown. It's the Rotary Club that has owned this tradition, working with DPW, and they've done the very best that they could to provide the lights that that are up there. And I think given where we're at in this pandemic, we just need to kind of take a deep breath and be thankful for what we have and not be getting ourselves all twisted in a bunch over lights, quite frankly. So I appreciate the interest. I appreciate the attention. And the Rotary Club has heard that need for improvement going forward. And folks are very interested in working toward that solution going forward. So thank you for the board's tolerance for this long issues and correspondence. And with that, I'll just say, I want to thank this board for its tireless work throughout this year. It's been a long calendar year. Ian carried the torch forward as chair well past his normal kind of time, and then I took over. And I want to thank the town for all of its work, no matter what your role is. We deserve some quiet nights, and unfortunately, a lot of us will be alone without family and our traditions. But please be safe, be well, and take care of yourself. So, and with that, I'll take a motion to enter into executive session.
So I move that we re-enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the purposes as described on the agenda.
And as chair, I declare that remaining in open session would be detrimental to the town's negotiating position. We will not reconvene in open session. Roll call vote. Selectman Johnson?
Johnson, yes.
Selectman Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yes.
Selectman Hashmi?
Yes.
And Selectman Marshall, yes. We are now in executive session. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.